about you?
Started. Is this working? No, this isn't working.
Yeah, good idea.
Now, what was your Marty was saying that.
I just took your picture.
You wouldn't do that. You're very bad. I was a passport supervisor.
No, she's here.
We're going to get started. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. I hope that's not too loud. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I want to thank you for coming to the Beach Club. This is our third in a series of 4 forums for the candidates here at the Mercer Island Beach Club. I want to thank the Beach Club itself for hosting and welcome all of the members and the guests as well. My name is Orna Samueli. Some of you have heard this before at the other forums, but for those that haven't, I've lived on the island for 3 years now. I've helped put these sessions together because I'd like to make a more informed decision this election. There's a lot at stake. I own a house on the island. I have a child in the school. And I want to personally understand more about what the candidates have to say, as I'm sure all of you do as well. I'd like to thank the candidates tonight for joining us and for meeting with you and helping you to understand the issues as well. And I'd like to welcome the 2 candidates tonight, Traci Granbois and Debbie Bertlin. I will be moderating tonight's session, and Cynthia Winiski will be our timekeeper tonight. I know we all want to jump to what the candidates have to say, but I just want to spend a few short minutes explaining the rules, the ground rules for tonight's session. They're important because we want to make sure that the evening is informative but also fair. And so these are the rules that will allow for that. The candidates are each going to have 5 minutes to make an opening statement. That will be followed by a 3-minute response. And then we'll move to the questions from the audience. If you have a question, I would ask you to step up here to the podium and we'll have a line, or you can come up as you like. We'll take questions. There'll be 1 minute each for you to share your question. Please, if you don't mind, state your name and where you're from. For example, I'm Orna Samueli. I live on the South End, and I'm a working mom, and here's my question. If you would, please state it in 1 minute, and then each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Both candidates will respond to each question. Let's see. Also, if you don't mind, please hold your applause till the end. I know that there are a lot of people who might get excited about a certain opinion, but it would save us all time if we could please hold your enthusiasm and then give both candidates a rousing round of applause at the end. There may be some here that are filming tonight. We've agreed to permit this. If you're uncomfortable with that, I'd ask that you sit in the back. And if at the end of the evening, if there will be a meet and greet in case you have some questions that you want to ask separately or you didn't get a chance to ask during the evening. So let's get started with opening statements. Based on a coin toss, the candidate opening will be Traci Granbois.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes. Good evening and welcome. Have you ever wondered why Mercer Island is facing the same problems that have plagued us for the last 6 to 8 years? In 2015, why do we have one of the most contested elections in the history of Mercer Island? I would argue that people are either very unhappy or really concerned. If people were really happy with the way our current city council is managing our fiscal house and the town center fiasco, is Hines in the moratorium? Is it out of the moratorium? And the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've spent on the town center stakeholder group, of which I am a part of, and I see a few of you in the audience. If people were truly happy, do you think that we would have contested a race in 4 out of the 5 seats? Hi, I'm Traci Granbois, and I would like to earn your vote for position 7 on your Mercer Island City Council. I think I offer a different path forward. If you're happy with the way things are currently going, then I don't know that I'm the option for you. But if you vote for the incumbents and you expect different results than what we have now, that's a risk. I've been all over the island, doorbelling, meeting new neighbors and friends, and it seems to me that people fall into 3 camps. We have a large group of people who are really unhappy, and I think that's why that we've seen so many grassroots organizations formed. The Say No Tolling on I-90, the Save Our Suburbs, the Save Our Library, and now this new Vision Mercer Island. And then I think we have a group of people who are very happy, but I think the vast majority of people are in the middle. They're very concerned about what's going on the island, but they don't know the best way forward. I hope that after this hour, you will know which camp that you fall into and that you will have a clear vision to go forward. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to give it to you in bullet points, and if you have any questions, please come ask me afterwards. I did my undergraduate work at the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied systems engineering. I had the opportunity in college to intern at the White House. After college, I was in the Peace Corps. I was a volunteer in both Namibia and Madagascar. When I returned stateside, I worked at Goldman Sachs. And then I pursued a law degree at Pepperdine University, and I liked that so much I got my master's in law and taxation at the University of Washington. And then I clerked for 2 separate justices at our state Supreme Court. I went across the street and I worked at our state Senate, where I wrote laws and advised senators on the implications of those laws. And now I'm a small business owner. So that was a Cliff Notes version on me. So one of the things I want to tackle head on is my family. One of my family's businesses is a development business. Does anybody know the cool local restaurant Bennett's? That building my parents built. So their business is a development business. My business is the attorney business. But having grown up in a family of developers, I've learned a lot about developing and land use. Knowledge of the law and knowledge of developing are 2 skills I think we need on our city council to create a town center for all. Speaking of the town center, I'd like to share my vision with you. Like many, I envision a village-like atmosphere where I feel safe walking with my family. From the grocery store for meat and butter, to the bakery for fresh bread, and finally to the park for a picnic lunch. Along the way, we would pass cool local shops and points of interest, and maybe stop at a local chocolatier for a sweet treat. Currently, our code allows for 2 stories and more with significant public amenities. But these amenities need to be valuable for islanders. Trivial amenities won't work. Why haven't we been offering developers the option of having pooled fund for a central plaza or a bigger improvement in our town center? Developers would have loved this idea, but it wasn't available. Why? I envision a city council who has a real pulse on what the citizens want. We have the ability to poll, to find out what we want, but we haven't done it. I envision a city council that has better fiscal transparency and responsibility for our tax dollars. Having worked at the White House and the Senate, I've learned a lot, but I don't have all the answers. But I do know where to find them or how to research. Over this next hour, I look forward to sharing my vision and some of my thoughts with you. Thank you for your support and vote.
Okay, can people hear me? Okay, so nods in the back. That's great. So I'm Debbie Bertlin. I too know many of you here in the room. It's been a 5+ month campaign cycle, and I think there's been many opportunities, and I think still a few more to go in terms of introducing ourselves and our histories. our records and the direction that we see the island going in these coming important years. So a little bit about myself. I too grew up on the island, Lake Ridge grad, South Mercer Junior High, which I know dates myself, high school graduate. I went off to Stanford, did my undergraduate and graduate degrees. I worked for the university both on campus and overseas in Poland when they had a study program there, and that was under communism. And that was an important experience for me because it taught me really what the value of democracy is and participating in your both economic and political system. I spent most of my career overseas, and that again was focused on Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, technology and economic development. I returned to Mercer Island in 1999 with Microsoft, and I bought a house here on Mercer Island. And again, it was considered something of an anomaly to buy a house on Mercer Island as a single woman, but I then got the accessories of the husband and the two children, so I feel like I fit in pretty well. I'm still with Microsoft again. This is my third tour, and I lead the planning, strategy, and operations team for a $30 billion portion of Microsoft's business. And to say that I understand P&Ls and I understand fiscal responsibility, I think is a fair statement. So the first thing I'd like to touch on is why run? And I do actually get this question fairly often. And I would say Mercer Island is an exceptional community that expects exceptional results. And this is the way that I have lived my life, both as an individual, in the civic realm, and in my professional life. Before I ran for council 4 years ago, I did have a strong civic record as a citizen advocate. I worked with the community as chair of the Conservancy Trust, pedestrian safety on 72nd on First Hill, the infrastructure, the city pool, and then through the Preschool Association, Manual Day School, and many other things. So when I ran back 4 years ago, I had a substantial track record of delivery in the community, and I do feel in this race that sets me apart. Since then, I have also focused on results. Some were expected and some were unexpected in terms of what came before us in the last 4 years. Expected was the fire station. Fortunately, we have delivered that. I wish that everything was perfect in terms of the roof, but we will be managing that process. Other things that were expected was finishing the accessible playground at Luther Burbank, which I started again as a citizen advocate. School partnerships, part of my platform was ensuring that we maintained the preschools here on the island as the North Mercer campus closed. I'm proud to say we have done that, and I think that is a very important community asset, whether city, school, or other. There were unexpected things that came up as well. I-90 tolling. I was one of the first people, actually was the first person in January of 2013 who said, we need a plan, we cannot wait. And I put together, after the mayor's meeting, a blueprint of what became the work plan that fought successfully I-90 tolling. We've also done a number of other things in terms of what we've achieved over the last 4 years, of which I'm very proud. Now, my opponent just spoke about camps. I think it's very interesting when you look back at the citizen survey that you find out that Mercer Island values its services and it values its city. 85% consider the city to be very well run with good services. And I think that will be an important part of our conversation as we go forward. I'd also say that there's important work still to be done in the next 4 years. First and foremost, of course, is I-90. And I think it's important that we communicate to Sound Transit and to the region that their mobility is islander mobility. 5,000 to 8,000 trips a day off this island. If we can't get places, other people can't get places, or they don't have us there. I'll use the same skills with I-90 that I used in the no tolling, which is collaboration, comprehensive, and multifaceted. Town center. We also need a lot of work to do there. People care deeply. It's not about what my vision is, it's what the island's vision is. And that has to be reflected through the stakeholder process, through the Planning and Design Commission, through so many of you who have been here. It has to be economically viable and socially vibrant. It is our town center. And then, of course, there's the city budget. We know that we have important work to do. This is not Mercer Island alone that faces it. But many of us, most of us, moved here for robust services that we enjoy through our parks, through our public safety, through our roads, and through our schools. And we must be smart and have an important community dialogue about how we maintain, if not even improve, that quality of life going forward. So thank you for your time, and look forward to your questions as we go forward in the evening.
Thank you. Running against an incumbent is often a difficult feat because there's a name recognition. but the incumbent also has to stand by her record. What other way do we have to assess an incumbent's ability and success for the position but by examining her record and results? Here is what I have heard for the past 3 years. Benchmarks, collaboration, engagement, critical juncture, inclusion, mass and decision-making, and the words transparency. But I haven't seen it in action. In fact, I have seen a lack of transparency. The releasing of the financial status of the fire station in executive session rather than in an open meeting, so the citizens can hear what's actually going on. The secret term sheets on the Hines property, which are now coming out through public records request. And then the additional public records discovery violations that where the city just paid out a $5,000 sanction. What I see is different from the words. And as a citizen, that is really frustrating. I see a group that wanted to stop tolling and had to force the council's hand. I see a group that wanted to save our library and had to force the council's hand. I see a group that wanted to save Luther Burbank from being a parking lot and had to force the council's hand. The sense that I get is that people don't think things are going so great. If everything is operating as it should, what do we have to hide? I hope that I'm able to convey to you my commitment to transparency. I cannot say it better than our Public Records Act. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may maintain control over the instruments that they have created. I offer a different path, one of transparency and fiscal responsibility. Thank you so much.
I too agree, records count, and it matters significantly in this race. My record is there both as a citizen advocate, my record is there as a council member, and it is a record I stand by. Much has been achieved. I personally do not know about a secret term sheet, so obviously it's secret, not only to the community, but to me as well. The library, we have people in this room who understood that at 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning when it was dark out, I met with them to understand how we could work to make sure that we got the library that we wanted. Luther Burbank. I'm on the Parks Committee. Look at the work that's being done at Calkins Landing. Look at the work that's been done with an accessible playground. There was a sound transit proposal, yes, to put a parking lot there. The job of council, in a transparent manner, has a responsibility to put those issues before the community and respond to their feedback. And that is exactly what happened. Revise or reject, and this community clearly rejected. I think you can talk to many people and understand that it was me who mediated that agreement, and several of those people are here in the room today. So again, when you look forward to the magnitude of issues that we face with I-90 tolling, who was it that put that work plan together? Who was it that spoke out first? Who was it that was on the committee that successfully negotiated that deal? Who also is working right now on I-90 in terms of maintaining our mobility? It is me. It is me who has a reputation for collaboration, for transparency and use of numbers. And if working with a number of people to come up with consensus agreement is old-fashioned or non-transparent, then I'm certainly not the right person to go forward.
Thank you. I'd like to invite anybody that would like to pose a question to the candidates to step up here. And Elliot, I'd like to ask you to see if you can fix the mics. We're going to try this.
Okay. Let's see if I can give it a go.
Does this?
It has to be green.
So as long as you're green light on, this is okay. This one, you still want to stand in front of the speaker. That's only taking that weird stuff. Okay. Because you're standing.
Weird sound. First of all, I want to thank you very much for offering us this opportunity, inviting us here tonight. My name is Meg Lippert, and I live on the north end near the high school, and I'm a small business owner. And my question is for both of you. Considering the fact that Mercer Island citizens opposed building City Hall and the fire station in Mercerdale Park, In the interest of transparency and accountability to Mercer Island citizens, would you support an advisory vote about leasing park land to build MICA in Mercerdale Park? And why or why not?
Tracy?
Thank you. I'm very supportive of arts in the community. I myself grew up taking piano lessons, ballet, dance. In fact, I graduated with John Gordon Hill's daughter, Ann Hill, from Mercer Island High School. I'm also very supportive of open space and places where we can go without modern enhancements. I think there's been a lot of controversy over MICA placement in Mercerdale Park. If you've been watching next door, you can see the threads back and forth. And I don't really know who's the local or the vocal minority and who's not. So I think the best way forward is to have a vote of the people so we can see what islanders really want and how they would like to proceed with MICA.
I fully support MICA, and I fully support the proposal to explore putting MICA at Mercerdale Park. And I emphasize right now it is a proposal. It is not fully funded. It has not passed environmental review. There has not been commitment from the community to find parking that would be so necessary and part of any permitting process. Yet that said, I think the opportunity to put an art center in our town center, where it is currently an underutilized element of the park, is incredible. We have no hesitation in funding our sports fields and other activities for people here on the island, and I think it's time that we create that same opportunity and dialogue for the arts. I would also say that MICA does represent the potential for significant economic development in our town center, and I think that is again, to be further explored. So I do support moving forward. I don't think as one person said, they actually said it very well, when you have a proposal to renovate your house or build a new home, do you go to the bank? No, you wait until you have the full plans, you have it vetted, you have it architected, etc. I don't think it is time right now to put MICA to a vote of the community.
Hi, I'm Bart Dawson. I lived on Mercer Island for 48 years. I guess my question to you both, I was on the stakeholder. Does the building that houses Bennett's, does that represent your vision for town center, what town center should look like?
So my turn to go first? No, it does not represent what I understand this community wants and how the community has articulated that through the stakeholder group, through planning and design, and so many other forums. What's clearly been articulated is less massing, is better access to retail and services. So to me, when I talk to the community, it seems to me that what has been placed there is actually indicative of what this community does not want with limited plazas, features, etc. So the other point that I have great concern about is the fact that there was a terrific accident that took place several years ago at that intersection. There's an electrical box there, and there was great risk, both to the firefighters and to the person who hit it with a car. And yet, nothing has been done since then, and I'm very disappointed both in PSC and property owners that they would continue forward with that type of risk to the community.
I would first like to point out that all of the buildings located in our town center have been approved by your current and former councils. All of the buildings are legal and to the code that is currently in place. They may not reflect the code that people desire now, and if that's the case, that's why we're working through this stakeholder process, which, as you all know, has been kind of suspended until after the election.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smith. Question for you. I worked with Debbie. I feel like I know her better than most because we worked on the same board for one of the preschools here on the island. I also did some work to look at new school locations in the last bond. And one of the things that took me by surprise was that we had offered up Luther Burbank Park, public land, which is probably one of the only resources we have on the island that's constrained. I'd like to understand how come the Transportation Committee suggested that as an option when it's such a finite resource and we can't even find public land to build schools for our children on.
I guess I don't know how best to answer this question. I'm not on the Transportation Committee. I do believe that our parks are very precious on Mercer Island. Because we are an island, we're limited in our nature. We can't go out. We can't make more land to have more parks. So I think they should be fiercely protected, and any changes to their current status of parks, I think, should go to a vote of the people who own them.
So the question, yeah, very definitely relevant for me. The first thing is, yes, parks are treasured, and I think if anybody looks at my background as chair of the Conservancy Trust, the work I've done at Luther Burbank and so many other places, that goes without saying. Part of transparency is putting proposals out there that you may or may not personally agree with. There's been significant dialogue historically, and there is now, about the need for parking, commuter parking in particular, on this island. The proposal was put forward in that same spirit of transparency. When the community spoke as very clearly and loudly as it did, that proposal was revoked and rejected. Now there's many people who think the mere fact that you put it out there is indicative of not supporting parks, etc. Sometimes these conversations have to happen, whether you personally agree with them or not. But if it had been found out that there would have been a proposal for parking that had not made it to light of day, I can be sure that there are many other commuters on this island who I've subsequently heard from who would be equally upset. So to me, this process was democracy in action. A proposal was put forward, it was clearly and resoundingly rejected, it was taken off the table, and now there is definitely work going on to make sure that the transcription error that had Kite Hill not adequately or appropriately demarcated within Luther Burbank is being addressed. And I have very clearly expressed that support several months ago, and again, more recently to Friends of Luther Burbank.
Thank you both for being willing to face tough questions. The current council appears to have never seen a tax that they didn't like and didn't vote for. We're now facing an ominous new tax in ST3 for up to $16 billion that by most calculations appear to add about $1,000 a year to each of our taxes for a typical house on this island for basically no benefit whatsoever to the island or islanders. And just this week we learned at a major Kate's meeting at the North End, it was a regional transportation meeting, that the future are in things like electric buses, intelligent vehicles, preserving right-of-way, and not trolleys and trains. So my question to you is, what is your position on ST3, and will you actively oppose it as completely wrong for Mercer Island as any new tax that provides us essentially no useful benefit? Thank you.
Okay, the first thing that we have to remember is that Mercer Island did vote in support of ST2. This community has consistently voted in support of public transit and regional transit options, and I take those historic votes very, very seriously. I do not have a specific position on ST3 right now because, frankly, I don't know enough. And I, too, as you know, was at the Kate's event. What strikes me is that what we need to do, or what council right now needs to do, is to make sure that our position and our mobility within the current negotiations with Sound Transit and Metro are protected, and focus as a council wholly on that particular position. ST3, in my mind, again, right now, I'm not there, but again, I am a public transit supporter in general, and I think what improves mobility in the region improves mobility on Mercer Island, and I would use that lens.
Thank you. You know, I am not as up on Sound Transit 3 as I perhaps should be. It is a distant future. But what I do know, and the mayor mentioned this metaphor last time, is either you're at the table or on the menu. I think right now Mercer Island is dessert. Sound Transit has finished the appetizer, they're going into the main course, and we're that sweet treat at the end. And I think that the council has done a great job by hiring the negotiator that Bellevue used. I think we're a little late in the game, but I think that we need to fight fiercely to protect our island interests. That doesn't mean I don't think we need to be friends with our neighbors and collaborate with our neighbors, but You don't see Bellevue looking out for Mercer Island's interests, do you? Just like you don't see tolling on the Montlake exit. Speaker Frank Chop protected his citizens, and I think we need that for Mercer Island.
Hi, my name is Marty Gale. My husband and I are starting our 40th year on the island. Debbie, in the last election, you ran against El Jenke, who is part of the Lindell case, which most of us know cost our city's insurance carrier $1 million and the city approximately $200,000. Your statement at that time about the case was, quote, "Where is the transparency we deserve? We've had months of silence from our city council instead. It's time the community hear what is being discussed and who is acceptable. Will the city council ever quit hiding?" Unquote. In May of this year, it was disclosed that the city had once again erred greatly with a records request for another ongoing lawsuit against us, including some records being destroyed by the city. This has already cost the city money and the case is not over. Since you are presently on the council, would you please tell us how you made sure that the public knew what was going on? I would like to know from each of you how you would handle court-ordered records requests to our city and how you would handle keeping the public aware of cases as they move through the court.
It's supposed to be to Tracy first, if you don't mind. Thank you.
So I think that just like the council has a dashboard, I think we could have a citizen dashboard on the city website. Keep it easy and simple. We could have the weather, we could have any pending and current lawsuits against the city, and also we could have our crime stats so the citizens know they have a place where they can go. To answer the second part of your question regarding the public records request, I think that we really need to research and get to the bottom line and find out what happened not only in 2011, but in the current case that's against the city, and take whatever steps are necessary, including policy changes to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It is my understanding that after the Lonnie Lindell case that there have not been any policy changes to how the city handles a public records request. So I think clearly that's an error and in the background of law that's unacceptable.
It's not a public records request, actually. It's part of a records request through a litigation effort. So I think we need to establish what the lawsuit is about. Fortunately, the reporter, and I hope it's accurate, will have an article in their printed and I assume online version tomorrow morning. I am as outraged as anybody in this room on this island that there be any such poor behavior that is either within the city's office or somebody that we have hired. This is a lawyer that was brought to us and that we, yes, approved through our insurance company. Now, this started back in 2006, 2007. That's where the issues sit. I was not on council in 2006 and 2007, but I still have responsibility to make sure that these types of things do not happen as we go forward. The first thing that I would call out right now is that there have been changes. There's been significant changes in the city leadership in the last 3 to 4 years. We have a new city manager, we have a new city attorney, we have 2 new assistant city managers, and we have continued to deliver services at a very high level. It's happened somewhat quietly, but the leadership has changed. The second piece that I would call out is that a litigation hold has been put in place. There has been a new policy. When the new city attorney, she's now in, and let's leave it at that, there's a litigation hold to ensure that when there is a request for documents pertaining to any potential lawsuit, that those records will not, under any circumstances, be destroyed, which is what happened over a period of time. So steps have been made, leadership has changed, and we cannot, of course, continue to have this type of behavior and accept this behavior, whether it happened on our watch or previous.
Quick question, is the sound okay or does it need to be? It's okay?
I actually have 2 questions, but I think I'll get in line again for the second one. My first question is having to do with MICA. I was surprised with your emphasis that MICA is a proposal and that there's nothing set yet, because a lot of what I've been hearing has made it seem more like it is more of a done deal and they're just sort of working out the details. And so some questions, do come up with regard to MICA and and so my questions are manifold. One is, would you allow groundbreaking on MICA before they get full funding for the project? And what guarantees would you put into the proposal so that the citizens are not on the hook if things fall short of expectation and there are additional costs that YTN or whoever does not cover?
Those are great questions, and those are questions that I hear from the community at large. And so the first thing is groundbreaking. We cannot break ground before several key things happen. The first, it has to be fully funded from a capital expense. There has to be a very clear and understandable operating expense budget and plan that's in place. There has to be sufficient parking that is available to serve the community that visits the Community Arts Center. There needs to be a SEPA environmental review. These are some of the steps that this proposal still needs to go forward with. I support that this proposal go forward, definitely. Guarantees, this is where you need to have some real smarts, both in your city council, but also, of course, in your city staff, because I do not accept that there would be any legal or financial vulnerabilities that the city would face in the event that MICA could not sustain itself. When you look at the public lease, or the lease document that is currently under discussion, that is addressed, it is in there, and it is certainly scrutiny not only of myself, but I believe, the vast majority of this island, to make sure that when it comes forward, it is sustainable on its own rights.
Thank you. Joy, I'm going to get to your question, but I'm going to go back to the last question, and I'd like to read something from Debbie Bertlin's 2011 campaign website. She states, "Who is accountable and what corrective actions will be taken to ensure that the City of Mercer Island does not face similar suits in the future? Anything less is completely unacceptable. Will the City Council ever quit hiding?" And then I would like to read, I have the case here currently against the city, the order from the judge if you'd like to see it, but there's undisputed record establishes that for more than 7 years since answering the plaintiff's first discovery request, which she's correct, this case does involve discovery sanctions, which is essentially public records not released to the attorney through the discovery process. It's really no different than you and I requesting a public records request, except this is in the context of a court case rather than as a citizen. So going on, the defendant, City Mercer Island, and its lawyers have, 1, not searched for, falsely denied the existence of, not disclosed, and continue...
Thanks for answering the current question.
Sorry for the interruption, please.
Excuse me, and continue to withhold essential evidence of other bicycle accidents and related plaintiffs. So back to the current question. I would support full funding for MICA before construction breaks ground. In addition, in the lease, I think we need to have protections in the event that MICA does use construction financing, that the city would be in the first position. So in the event that MICA did default, generally the bank would be in the first position, but we would need to have protections in the lease so that the city would be in the first position, so that the city would gain control of the building rather than the bank having the property, or excuse me, the building, because the land would still be the city. So those are just one of the protections that I think we would need in the lease.
I have a two-part question that deals with city policy developed from citizen input versus private dealings with non-city entities. The state law provides for the city council membership to elect a mayor. Elect a mayor, and who presides over the city council meetings. In his absence, the city council can elect a mayor pro tem for the duration of the mayor's absence. I'm dyslexic and I confuse manager with mayor all the time.
You have 30 seconds left for the question, if you know.
There is no provision for a deputy mayor. The question in two-part. What is your position on the use of the term deputy mayor? And what is your position on the practice of council members separately dealing with off-island entities?
I believe that we do have a deputy mayor. I believe that Dan Grouse is currently our deputy mayor. Is that correct, Councilmember Cerro? So I don't know how best to answer your question. I think we do have a mayor and a deputy mayor.
No provision for it
No provision in the charter?
in the law.
In the law. I'm sorry, I don't have any more knowledge on that than what I've just stated, so I would be happy to look into that for you and get back to you. And then your next question, council members dealing with off-island interests behind closed doors, is that, I think everything should be open to the citizens, and people need to, I think there should be notice and people need to understand what's going on.
There is currently a mayor and a deputy mayor. I think the extent to which we need to dig in and understand what the grounding documentation is behind that, I'm sure we can do and get back to you. As far as the city cooperating, communicating, working with non-Mercer Island entities, off-island entities, we are an island, and it's incredibly important that we be cooperative neighbors. Obviously, we need to first and foremost represent our island interests, because that is your job. You're elected by the citizens of Mercer Island. But that said, as the mayor has said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I have seen that very much so in the last few years, which is why when I negotiate hard, but I certainly maintain a position at the table to ensure that we understand all aspects of the dialogue, all interests, and ideally come up with a solution that is first and foremost a win for the island and the rest of the region too.
John Hamlin, Mercer Island resident, South End here, father of 4 from 8 to newborn. And the comment was made earlier by the council member on the matter of looking at transit through the lens, like looking at things through a transit-oriented lens. And what I'd like to do is have each of the candidates kind of explain that lens and the structure by which they would analyze various transportation proposals. For instance, my personal opinion is that the Sound Transit Rail program has failed from the start from an engineering, financial, and operational perspective. That comes from years of experience in operations and technical management on my part, in understanding what it takes to actually engineer something that's actually robust. And not only that, but simply as part of a larger network. It's a system analysis approach that to date, in my efforts to understand this, I've failed to find. And so that's how I draw my conclusions. I would like to understand how you, looking at the same information, or what your approach would be in dealing with these matters as we proceed, because like right now I'm looking for the information on the 630 route, the ridership level. If you know that information, I've requested it from Metro, haven't gotten it yet. But my guess is it would be cheaper to buy everybody an Uber pass.
Okay, we can get you the rider information on the 630. It was presented at council 4 weeks ago, so there is some information there. I don't know if it was, I think it was verbally provided as opposed to in documentation, so at a minimum we can certainly go back and look at the transcripts and the video that's there. As far as transit, first and foremost, my responsibility right now is to negotiate for our mobility on the basis of the MOU and the agreement, the 2004 agreement. First and foremost, that's what's on the table right now, because they are planning to close the center roadways in June of 2017. And we have, in those agreements, mitigation must be addressed before those center roadways are closed. That is the burning issue. That is the priority right now. There is also, of course, a priority to ensure that whatever is built is safe. And that's where I have to say we will need to be looking at and relying on people who have that level of expertise. I can read the agreements, I can understand how to negotiate when it comes to mobility, et cetera, but I'm probably not a safety engineer when it comes to rail on bridge, etc. So I'm hoping I answered your question there.
I think how I approach transit is how I hope to approach all problems. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to close the center roadways before we actually know if the light rail, the fixed rail, can go across the bridge? I'm not saying that it's not going to go across, but it needs to make sense. And I know that the voters voted for sound transit too, but that doesn't mean that we might not change our minds later, given information that has come to light afterwards. So does it make sense is how I would approach the transit problem. And I don't have the information for your 6:30 question, but I can happily get that for you. Thank you.
That one's not working.
Hi, I'm Leslie Bain, native of Mercer Island, West Mercer grad, North End. You know, Traci, when you started this evening, you were talking about how contentious this election season is. And my question for both of you is, how can we have a positive vision? How can we have leadership that gets past the really kind of distasteful dialogue that has been going on? It's been really disturbing to me that I want to feel like this community is forward-thinking, positive, and generous and gracious. And I would love to hear how you would encourage that kind of community for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. You know, I think a lot of people feel they do things differently on their computer than they would say to you to your face. And that's something that I hope that we all would work on, and myself included. In terms of this election, you know, I think we need to look at records, and I don't think that is a negative, looking at our current council's record. Otherwise, how else would we assess how they're doing?
As I tell my children, it's not only what you say, but it's how you say it that's also very important, particularly in public discourse. And some, unfortunately, of what I've seen this season has been some of the politics and culture that prevail at a national level and somewhat at a regional level come onto our island, and I find that distressing. When I think about how I conduct myself in this election, I want my daughters to be proud. I want the other children on this island to be proud that their mother, their parent, that their elected officials are focusing on what can be done, the good on this island, how we progress and how we move forward, not on the shortfallings or failings of the other person, real or unreal in many cases. So I would also point back to when I ran in 2011, I ran against Al Jenke. And for those of you who were here, you remember that there was a tremendous amount of very harsh things that were put in the press about him. When I ran, I did not use those harsh statements. I did not go there. I ran on counsel and transparency and delivery and my own track record. I didn't need to attack what were real or presumed failings of this other council member. So when I go forward, you are all my neighbors. When I run into you at QFC, at Bennett's, anywhere, I want you to remember me in this campaign as having moved forward with integrity, with responsibility, and with respect, and that I know that my parent or my children, and my parents for that matter, will be proud that I conducted myself accordingly.
Question or an answer? I want to answer the question.
I answered. You answered. Okay.
Hi, I'm Bob McVitt, 7238 Southeast 32nd Street. This is not a personal attack or an attack on anybody. What I'm about to say is based upon court records, court findings, and court orders. Katie Knight hired that attorney in the Camasia case for a sworn declaration in that case. The insurance company did not. The insurance company might be paying that lawyer. That lawyer's duties and ethical obligations are to the city. The city can fire that lawyer, get another lawyer, or whatever they want to do, number one. Number two, these events started in 2006 or 7. They continued through September 14th, 2015. The city hid documents, destroyed documents, and the counsel for the plaintiff filed a motion in April of this year. It was opposed, all kind of affidavits and what have you. The city lost the motion, skirted around, kicked out a bunch of documents. There weren't enough documents, had to kick out more documents, resulting in this order. So all the activity happened from April 24 to September 14. The question is, will you support a full investigation